Okay, today we're going to take a look at judgment of the earth in record time. People always ask, well, can't you just explain it in 2 minutes? Okay, we're going to go ahead and explain it in a couple of minutes here. But if we look at the King James, and we're in Revelation 14, verse 15 here, it starts with the harvest of the earth. The King James calls it the harvest of the earth. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, thrust in your sickle and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. And he that sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. Okay, so we got one angel, one sitting on a cloud. We're going to assume that's Jesus. Verse 17, and another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven. He also had a sharp sickle. So we got two angels, two sickles, and what does that tell us? Well, it reminds us there's two different judgments. There's a judgment of the dead, and there's a judgment of the living. Then there's also a judgment of the good and a judgment of the evil. Most of us know that it's a completely different process of the judgment of the people that are saved and the judgment of the people that are lost. And another angel came out from under the altar, which had the power over fire, and cried with a loud voice to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, thrust in your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vines of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. And the angel thrust the sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and cast it into a great winepress of the wrath of God. Now this confuses a lot of people, but if someone explains to you there's two different judgments, a judgment of the saved and a judgment of the lost, okay, which one are they talking about in verse 18 and 19? And the winepress was trodden without the city, and the blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horse bridles, by the space of 1,600 furlongs. Okay, so we know there's two different judgments, but how do we know this is the harvest of the earth, and how do we know the harvest of the earth deals with the judgment? Well, if we just click on the verse here, verse 15, it comes up with a number of references. Okay, the reference we're looking for is in Matthew 13, verse 30. Let both grow together until the harvest. At harvest time I will tell the reapers, first collect the darnel and tie it in bundles to be burned, and then gather the wheat into my barn. Okay, so these two explain one another. How do we know that's true? Well, okay, there's two different harvests. How do we prove it from Revelation 14 that there's two different harvests? Let's back up a little bit and take a look at verse 4 here, and that'll help explain things a little bit. These are they which are not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto God and the Lamb. Okay, so here we got the first fruits. Okay, we got the first fruits, which explains if there's first fruits, there's going to be secondary fruits, which agrees with Matthew 13. Okay, there's something important that I want to cover here is once we finish up with the harvest of the earth, what follows after that? That's important for us to understand this. Basically, you got the understanding of the judgment period, but let's dig a little bit deeper. Okay, right after the judgment period, the 7 angels with the 7 last plagues. And I saw another sign in heaven, and great and marvelous, 7 angels having the last 7 plagues, for in them is filled the wrath of God. Okay, so it goes on with this people sitting up in heaven or seeing a vision in heaven, and then goes on, continues in verse 16 to where we see the angels pour out their vials of wrath. And I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the 7 angels, "Go your ways and pour out the vials of the wrath of God upon the earth." This is right after the judgment period is completed. The saved are judged by Jesus with a sickle. The lost are judged by the angel with a sickle. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. We can look up these words over here. Noisome, which is a bad, ugly, mean, wrong, worthless, cowardly, criminal, injurious, and grievous sore, which is evil, malicious, hurtful, calamitous, disease, mischief, malice, guilt, the devil, sinners, and a sore, which basically means an ulcer, as if drawn together. Well, what does that mean? Well, we really should look at, it says probably from 1670, but let's look up a couple other words. Upon, which means into or to, figuratively, to or on a purpose. Okay, so we got a purpose. For, in order for, such as. Means among, against, towards. I mean, isn't this describing what we're seeing today? And realistically, we're seeing what? It's getting easier and easier to look at people. They open their mouths, and it's getting easier to see if they're saved or if they're on the side of those being lost. Okay, so we know that immediately following the judgment of the earth, we're going to see these last 7 plagues, and the first one is going to place a mark, something on somebody that's going to make it so distinguishable that they are among the lost. So we just have to keep that in mind. We just got to ask ourselves, is this a spiritual sore or is it a physical sore? Okay, we're going to go back and we're going to look at this Matthew 13. We can just click on here. It'll take us right to the reference. And we're going to take a look at Matthew, the parable of the tares and the wheat. Everybody's heard the word tares. Anybody ever explain to you what this word tares means? I'm just going to click over to the NET because it's an updated version. The parable of the weeds, they call it. He presented them with another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a person who sowed good seed in his field, but while everyone was sleeping, an enemy came and sowed darnel. Now this is why I like using some updated Bibles, because you're going to look at, everybody's heard tares, everybody knows what tares are. Tares are weeds, you know, they look like wheat, but they aren't really wheat. But now we see this word darnel, and you go, what's a darnel? Well, okay, with this Bible program, all you got to do is hover over it, and it'll give you the definition. Get this, you're not going to believe this. Darnel, a poisonous ryegrass weed. Darnel, a weed that generally resembles wheat until ripe. Close examination will often fail to discern the difference until its black grain appears. Black grain, isn't that amazing? It is most toxic just before harvest. Its poison causes lethargy, deep sleep, and even death. Okay, now doesn't this explain what we're seeing today from the left, from the communists, from all of these people that are saying there's multiple genders and all these attacks on gods and everything else? What are they causing? Death. See how all this is explained by just looking at a few things? Okay, one of the things I wanted to get back into is the fact that when we look at Revelation 15, we kind of noticed that. Let me click over to King James again. We're gonna actually we want to look at the harvest of the earth. You notice the word judgment doesn't show up in here. So how do we know that it is a judgment period? Well, okay. What we're going to do is we're going to search the word judge. We're going to search for judge and judgment. So we're going to search J-U-D-G. And judge will have an E, judgment will have an M. So we'll get both of them here. And all we got to do is click up over here, and we can expand the search results up over here. And we can just go to the bottom because we're looking at Revelation. We're in Revelation 14. So where did they use the word judgment here? Basically, we got Revelation 14:7, and we got Revelation 15:4. So all we got to do is remember those because we don't have a pop-up for the definitions of the word judgment here. So we can click back to the Bible. We can go to Revelation 14:7 and 15:4. So we go to Revelation 14:7. So we back up a bit to see where was judgment mentioned and which judgment was it. So here we got the word judgment, saying with a loud voice, "Fear God and give glory to Him, for His hour of judgment has come." So now we know that Revelation 14 is talking about the hour of God's judgment, and when we look at it, that's the Greek word krixis, which means a decision, tribunal, and justice. Okay, so that's the judgment period it's talking about. It's talking about the decision period. The other one that we saw was Revelation 15:4, and when we go down to 15:4, "Who shall not fear God and glorify His name? For you are holy, and all the nations shall come and worship before you. For your judgments," here's the other judgment, which is dikaioma. It's an equitable deed. So there we go. We got the two judgments over here. They're two different Greek words, and they're talking about the decision and equitable deed, a statute or a decision. So basically, when we look at the two judgment periods surrounding the harvest in Revelation 14, we know it's a decision is being made, and it's a pretty important decision. So in review, we looked at the harvest of the world. We know that there's two sickles, two angels, and we know that there's going to be a judgment of the good, a judgment of the evil, and it's pretty much explained. We looked back at verse 4 up here and saw that there's the first fruits, and we looked over at Matthew 13, that also explains it. And when we looked at the definition of the tares, which is darnel, we know it's a poisonous plant, way beyond just being a weed. It's a poisonous weed. We also looked at the definition of the sores on the people, that the last plague is going to put a mark on them, those that worship the beast and worship his image. And we know how malicious those people are actually going to be. So when we put this all together, we not only see the definition of the judgment in Revelation 14, we also see that the first of the last 7 plagues is going to make it pretty evident on recognizing exactly who's lost. And we got to ask ourselves the question, why is it so easy whenever these people open their mouths to prove that they're working as hard as they can to work with the devil and to be lost for all eternity?